rain here in Texas.
It's now about 10 minutes before the top of the hour, and time now for Storm Watch. Well, throughout the course of the day, there will be a chance for a few big thunderstorms developing across the lower 48. And we'll say more about that coming up in just a moment. But right now, it's time for your tropical update. And as we take a look at the Atlantic Basin, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean, we have several suspect areas, several little disturbances that we're tracking very, very closely. And first of all, we zoom into the Gulf of Mexico. At this point, there's a very, very weak area of low pressure that's poised over the central and the western Gulf. It's a 10-13 millibar low right now, so a very weak low pressure system. But at any rate, it will continue to drift towards the west for today, and it will likely be sparking off some showers and storms, and we'll likely see the rain kind of picking up in intensity over the coastal region of Texas, and perhaps also seeing some welcome rains too coming into northern sections of Mexico. But as far as development is concerned, development though is not likely, at least for the next 24 hours. Now at the same time, we have another area of low pressure that's been kind of drifting across the Florida Keys and the Florida Straits, and it actually extends southward into around the Cuba area and just now approaching the Yucatan Peninsula. And right along this little weak disturbance, we've also been seeing some showers and some thunderstorms, and we've seen some locally heavy rains developing over some parts of southern Florida, especially around Dade and Broward County. Meanwhile, heading a little bit farther towards the east, the weather starts to calm down just a little bit until we encounter our next little tropical disturbance. Little tropical wave has been pulling off towards the west, right now situated between Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. And as the system continues to move towards the west, it has been producing some showers and storms, and this pretty much will be the trend for most of the afternoon, with numerous showers and numerous thunderstorms too flaring up across the islands. So if you're planning a little getaway cruise or a vacation, you'll likely be encountering some very wet conditions, at least for today. You can see some of these spotty showers flaring up around St. Croix and St. Thomas, the rain skirting just north of San Juan, and a big pocket of rain near Ponce has now worked its way westward, and that will eventually take aim on Hispaniola a little later on today. So as long as that tropical wave continues to pull towards the west, we'll still see some very unsettled and rather squally conditions likely for today. But the good news is that we're not really anticipating any development in the next 24 to 36 hours or so, simply because the little tropical disturbance continues to be very close to land, and that will likely inhibit any further development, at least in the short term. Now a little farther towards the east, we have this big broad circulation here, little twisting motion with the clouds. Here's another tropical wave that's been pulling off towards the west. So you can see that the trend is now favoring more and more tropical waves, things getting a little bit more active across the Atlantic Basin. This one's still a couple days away from the Lesser Antilles, but it could be possibly a tropical depression trying to form around this region because, again, there has been some circulation, some twisting motion with the clouds. And we're definitely seeing some convection, some showers and thunderstorms firing up in association with it. So we'll watch this area very closely as it continues to drift towards the west at about 10 to 15 miles per hour. Here's another satellite perspective of that tropical wave. Another wave, too, just to the west of the Cape Verde Islands. And then we have another tropical wave that will eventually emerge off the coast in the next 24 hours or so. So just a series of tropical waves that we're watching closely as they pull across the Atlantic Basin. Heading out towards the eastern Pacific, we have clusters of showers and thunderstorms poised just off the coast of Mexico and back over towards the Gulf of Tehuantepec. Right now, though, nothing is looking too terribly threatening. And for the lower 48, a rather quiet start to your Wednesday. We've had some showers and thunderstorms, though, kind of brewing across the Gulf coastal region. At the same time, though, a new storm system is taking shape in the upper plain states, and we have had some rather intense thunderstorms rumbling across North Dakota, sliding over towards Minnesota this morning, especially right around International Falls. And that is simply a taste of things to come, because there'll be more thunderstorms developing for the upper plain states today, and some of these could be quite powerful. They will likely be dropping some large hail, perhaps producing some very gusty winds and torrential downpours.
And thanks for joining us for Storm Watch. Mark Mancuso here alongside our tropical coordinator, John Hope.
It's still raining in West Texas. Flood watches have been hoisted for yet another day. We'll check that out on the radars in just a second. But first, let's check on the tropics. It's starting to heat up in the tropics these days. And here's John with all the details.
Thank you, Mark. The tropics indeed are heating up just a little bit. I'm going to start in with a long loop and show you the features that we're looking at. But the good news is right off that we still don't have any tropical depressions, much less any tropical storms or hurricanes. In the Gulf of Mexico, we have a little disturbance out there that's being monitored. As a matter of fact, the Hurricane Center is going to send the reconnaissance aircraft out there this afternoon to check that out. More about that in a few minutes. And then the wave that was north of Puerto Rico yesterday has moved westward and is now sort of the low center. If there would be a low center at all, it would be over this big island here of Hispaniola, which includes Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and therefore that doesn't have a chance to develop while the center is there. We'll see what happens when it gets farther west, say between there and Cuba. The main feature we continue to watch is out here in the Atlantic, where we have a strong tropical wave, which certainly is on the verge of being a tropical depression, and we'll focus in on that in just a second. But first of all, we'll take you back to the Gulf of Mexico, and the area that's being monitored in the Gulf is out here in the west central part of the Gulf, and there's where the aircraft is being dispatched this afternoon to check that out. This isn't moving an awful lot. It's kind of drifting off very slowly, we think, toward the west, and whether or not that would ever be a threat to the U.S. is hard to say. Right now, it seems more likely that it would go westward, and perhaps the center or whatever develops there would go into the northern part of Mexico. But that's really too early to call. I would like to point out that this upper low that we've been following flared up quite a bit last night over portions of the western part of Cuba and the Florida Straits, but that's kind of died down a little bit now. So next we'll take up the tropical wave that had us really kind of concerned yesterday when it was over here in Puerto Rico. And what has happened is this has moved toward the west, and if there were any low center, it would actually be over land, and you know on a tropical system it won't develop while the center is over land. Now, originally the Hurricane Center had reserved an aircraft to go down there and check that out, but they have canceled that flight because the center is over land. Now, that'll take us out. Well, first of all, I wanted to show you in the Puerto Rico radar that most of the activity that we looked at yesterday is past Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, just a few stray showers left there, and the heavier rain is over there by the Dominican Republic. Now we'll go out to the Atlantic and have a look at that tropical wave here. This is now about 850 or so miles away from the Caribbean Sea. It's still moving toward the west, and we have indications that there's a good circulation out there. We have ships reporting westerly winds, so this could be classified as a depression at most any time. The movement is mostly toward the west, or perhaps a little bit to the north of due west, and whether or not this might affect the northern islands is a little bit too early to call. There's a possibility it could affect the northern Leeward Islands, so you folks should be watching that. It's also possible we think that the center could skim just to the north of there. So a lot of time to watch that yet, and it'll be watched very carefully, as you can imagine, over the next day or two. We did want to show you that east of all that, southwest of the Cape Verde Islands, we have yet another disturbance, which I think has a little bit of a low-level circulation, so we'll have to monitor that as well. Nothing to worry about now on the coast of Mexico. That disturbance down south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec that we looked at yesterday hasn't developed yet, and we don't see anything else there that's about to develop right away. Well, we got some flooding rains, I think, in West Texas and other places, so here is Mark Mancuso to give you all the details. Mark?
All right, thank you, John, and we'll see you next hour. And as we take a look at the current weather map, there you can see the weak area low pressure in the Gulf John was talking about. Well, over here to the west in West Texas, it's still raining. And looking at the radar, you can see an area of rain continuing to move up through West Texas this morning. We can get you in a little bit closer here, too, and you can see exactly who's involved with this. And as we zoom in with our radar, we show you the wet weather coming through West Texas. I think that is available to us. Let's see if my director's around and able to punch the button and show us that close-up view of the West Texas radar. But I guess he must have taken a break, so we'll let him take his break. As we take a look at the lightning data for you, there you can see some hits on the lightning here. This rain is all taking dead aim on Lubbock, Texas. So it's a kind of a wet morning from near Del Rio to San Angelo, and that wet weather is taking aim on Lubbock. You can see all the thunderstorms in the Gulf. Thunderstorms could become severe later today and particularly tonight across Minnesota and northwest Wisconsin. Twin Cities, mostly dry today, but tonight could be a different story as thunderstorms come rumbling in.
A cool front pushes temperatures down in the northeast while thunderstorms bring the threat of flash flooding to Texas. Those stories and more next on Weather Center.
Planning a special event? You'll be amazed at all the things you can rent. And the money you'll save over buying them. Renting. It's the smart way to get things done.
Check your yellow pages for information on ARA members.
Well, stateside weather continues quite active. Earlier today, reports of a water spout. And now for our tropical update with Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thanks, Bill. Sort of blinked in there for a second, but we've got some interesting news in the Atlantic Basin. We have Tropical Depression 2, and here's the latest information on it. 16 north, 51 west. That's about 675 miles to the east of the Leeward Islands. Here's the low pressure center here, the Tropical Depression. Leeward Islands right in here, Puerto Rico over here. It's moving to the west-northwest at about 20 miles per hour, so the general track is just over or just north of the islands. It's a little too early to tell just yet. It's moving at about 20 miles per hour, and at that current speed, it should be in the general vicinity of the islands here in about 30 to 36 hours. However, some of the effects of it may be felt earlier than that. Let's get a feel for where it is on the satellite imagery. Here it is out here. You can see this big, massive thunderstorm activity. Here's Puerto Rico here, the islands right in through here, so you can see the orientation here. Of course, the United States, Florida is way over here, still a long way from there, and a long way to go. Now, when we zoom in on the system, you can see some very nice spiral banding over here from the standpoint of development. It's starting to develop its own anticyclone up here and some spirals on the upper level cirrus coming this way. It's still in an area of rather stable and dry air, however, and you can see that the thunderstorm activity, which is showing up here as the most bright red and orange colors, are starting to dissipate just a little bit, but the system is very likely to reform thunderstorms near the center off and on through the night. Now, as you look at the water vapor imagery, which is an indication of the dryness in the upper layers and how much moisture is in the environment, here are the islands right in here, Puerto Rico here again. Here's our tropical depression. And you can see this dry slot in here is slowly being eroded as the tropical depression moves on to the west-northwest. And so we think that it has a pretty good chance for continued development, and it could become a tropical storm within the next 24 hours. So everybody here in the Windward Islands and Puerto Rico as well, you should be paying attention to the system. It could be a potential danger to you in the next 24 to 36 hours. Now, elsewhere in the tropics, we had been looking at a tropical wave yesterday that looked like it could have developed into a tropical depression itself, and that was just north of Puerto Rico here. It's since moved on to the west, now just to the north of the Dominican Republic, encroaching on the extreme southeastern Bahamas now. No development is likely the next 24 hours. You see that upper level low spinning around at the top of your screen there, and that's still producing some pretty good shear over the system, but a lot of thunderstorm activity in here. All this whitish thunderstorm affecting the island here, and it'll affect Cuba, the Bahamas, and head off in the general direction of South Florida. So you may see some pretty good rain the next 24 to 36 hours there. Here's that upper level low over here spinning around, and here's that system there. Our other one is way off the screen out in the central Atlantic. Now in the Gulf of Mexico, we've had a lot of thunderstorm activity. You can see out here, look at all of this. Quite a change from what we've had the previous week or two, and we've been monitoring a low pressure center in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, somewhere in the general vicinity of here, and the plane flew out there today, aircraft recon, and found a very weak low pressure center. Thunderstorm activity is not organizing, and there's some very strong upper level winds out of the north and northeast, which is unfavorable for development, which is very good. So that system is in check right now, but it's not all the way gone, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. Caribbean is generally safe. We have trade winds out of the east at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. A few thunderstorms in the western Caribbean, but no development expected there. Farther out on the Atlantic and off the African coast, here comes another tropical wave of thunderstorm activity. We've been monitoring another one that had a pretty good spin to it, and you can see that in the last 6 hours, thunderstorms have weakened rather quickly. We're left with just a little spin there, but we'll continue to monitor that as it moves on to the west. Out in the Pacific, it's quieted down quite a bit, and we have two potential trouble spots, one to the southwest to the Gulf of Tehuantepec here, and another one farther out, but both of them are moving to the west, and really no real danger right now. Well, stay tuned to the Weather Channel. Here comes Bill with some more on weather over the continental United States.
All right, Steve, thank you very much. Again, the area I want to talk about, I briefly mentioned a waterspout. There was one earlier today around the northern portion of Brevard County. We'll have video for you at the top of the hour showing a very well-defined funnel cloud, which evidently did touch down. Thankfully, it's quieter here, but still some big storms in Tampa. Also, look at these storms blowing up in Minnesota. Severe threat pretty high, even around the Twin Cities. Don't let your guard down. Severe thunderstorm watch now in the areas in yellow. Not quite Minneapolis, but it may be there or reissued shortly. Check out these storms quickly. Alexandria, Minnesota, 70-mile-per-hour wind, hail and high winds, and it's all racing to the east.
A cool front pushes temperatures down in the northeast while thunderstorms bring the threat of flash flooding to Texas. Those stories and more next on Weather Center.
Sun is rising. Shine, shine. Looks like a great day.
It's a great day for the comfort and convenience of changing tint Transitions lenses. Indoors, they lighten. Outdoors, they darken. So lightweight plastic Transitions lenses are right in your life.
Thunderstorms drop heavy rain from the Central Plains all the way up into Minnesota tonight. Hi, I'm Dave Schwartz, and welcome to this edition of Storm Watch. There is a tropical depression out there in the Atlantic Ocean, may become a tropical storm, and that's heading this way. That headlines this edition of our Tropical Update. And here we go, Tropical Depression number 2. That's what it's called right now, TD number 2. It's an organized system with a surface low estimated at 1,005 millibars, or on your home barometer, if you were on a boat out here, it might be as low as 29.68 inches of mercury. This will most likely go lower. The pressure will go lower, which means it is strengthening, and by tomorrow, we may have ourselves the second tropical storm of the season. The movement has been west-northwest at 18 miles per hour. If it maintains that track, it gets closer to the United States, obviously. It also gets closer here to the northeast Caribbean islands. And it is close enough now that various governments here have issued tropical storm watches. These are the islands that tropical storm watches are in effect for right now. A tropical storm watch is this. It is an advisory that lets you know that within the next 36 hours, day and a half, tropical storm force winds are possible. Now, it's not even a tropical storm right now, but it is anticipated that it will continue to strengthen. Tropical storm force winds range anywhere from 39 miles per hour to 74 miles per hour. Tropical storm watch is in effect, and here it is. Here is TD number 2. Notice the shower activity, the pulsing. Those are those upward drafts, and the clouds and thunderstorms, heavy rain showers that form. The wind shear, minimal. Nice outflow pattern developing on at least the north side, to some degree here on the south side. And these are the northeast Caribbean islands. Here are our friends in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So they are keeping a close eye on this. Now, if it maintains that northwest-northwest course, it would miss the islands, at least directly. The center of the circulation would miss it. But what's even better is this. The stronger winds will be to the north of the track. So if the track is here, north of my arm would be the stronger winds as this thing intensifies. Where are we here? We're south of the track. So if the track verifies, we will not have the worst of this, what is now a tropical depression. But look at the thunderstorm activity. You see that near the center of the circulation, and you've got to say, hey, this thing is strengthening. So we're watching it. Tropical depression number 2. still a fur piece from the United States, way away. Here's Miami, here's Cape Hatteras, and there is Cape Cod. So it's quite a ways away from the United States. Notice the westerlies way far to the south, a cold front now into Georgia and South Carolina. Low pressure and westerly winds may eventually draw this north, and it may just miss the United States, but at this point it is way too early to tell. This would be Tropical Storm Bonnie on our 1998 hurricane season list. This is something that we will skip through. The tropical depression is right out there. Okay, closer to home here in the Caribbean, quiet. A disturbance that brought us some rain 36 hours ago here in Puerto Rico is now moving through Haiti with a few showers. That's being ripped up by an interaction with an upper level low here, strong southerly winds. And elsewhere in the tropics, we've been monitoring an area of low pressure that is now over the central Gulf of Mexico. Elsewhere in the Atlantic, oh, this looks like it's got possibilities, and there's another disturbance moving off the African coast. But right now the big story is TD number 2. Here in the Pacific, all is quiet. One area of disturbed weather south of Baja California, and another one has moved out from, that does not look very scary out here near the Gulf of Tehuantepec. So it's the Atlantic. That's where the action is right now. Over water, that is. That's your tropical update. Look at these thunderstorms. Slow movers. Reports of 3 inches per hour in eastern South Dakota. Winds gusting 60 and 70 miles per hour. The northern end of this line now has moved through Minneapolis-St. Paul. There it goes with some strong winds out to the east of town, moving across the river into Wisconsin. Winds been clocked at 30 to 40 miles an hour across the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Hope nothing happened at your place, no wind damage or power outages. And we're following those storms back down through Nebraska, too, where they've been severe. Your forecast is...
A tropical depression seems to be picking up steam in the Atlantic Ocean. We'll show you where the system is now and where it may be headed next on Weather Center.
Every day, more people are choosing Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse, and here's why.
Only Lowe's carries severe weather exterior paint.
With an endless selection of colors, this paint can really dress up your home.
And like the name says, it'll stand up to severe weather. Rain, snow, sleet, or sun.
So tough, it comes with a 15-year warranty.
Charlie Brown, race for your life, Charlie Brown.
The following movie is rated PG-13.